What is your most disturbing secret? Have fun watching, and be sure to write in the comments what you think about these stories. Maybe you have encountered similar. Story 1. My brother isn't invited to my wedding. My family thinks it's because he was just mean to me, but it's actually because he sexually assaulted me for years on top of physical and mental abuse, and I feel bad for not inviting him and finally cutting contact with him. Story 2. When I was around 5 years old, an uncle of mine frequented my house to have beer with my grandfather. It was a huge round table, and he would call me to sit on his lap and he would touch me discreetly, hiding under the table sheets. It happened for quite some time. I kept it for many years because I thought it was my fault. I remember having to visit his wake a few months after the incident. He died of alcohol abuse, as far as I know. I felt ashamed, as I thought the people in the wake knew what happened between the both of us. I admitted it to my mom many years later, and she could not say anything. I remember being relieved he had passed. It haunted me for almost my entire childhood. Story 3. I recently changed jobs after the last 7 years, with one company going from a server to cook to general manager. My new job feels very unfulfilling, working as a department manager at a grocery store. I feel like I don't belong. I also paint and want to paint a display piece for a massive competition next year, and have never competed before. And no, I'm not skilled enough yet. The lack of friends other than my wife has left me feeling like I'll never have a community to fit into and enjoy the things that make me happy. Story 4. I smoke for about 13 years. Starting from when I was about 15 years old, I decided I finally want to quit. I did for good. Not a single one smoked again. About 2 years have passed. Started doing sports, lost a lot of weight. I look better than ever, but I am sadder than ever. I still feel like I need cigarettes to make me happy or enjoy things. I never told this anyone, not even my wife, because I try to hide it. But the truth is that at least once a week I still think about how happy a cigarette would make me. Bottom line is, please don't ever start smoking. Story 5. In elementary school, 5th grade to be exact, me and a buddy would fling small crumpled pieces of paper at people during class. We sat in the back, which was, of course, the prime spot. One day I flung some chewed Hubba Bubba bubble gum, and it landed in this girl's hair. At first, I thought it was hilarious. When she noticed something was in her hair, she made attempts to get it out, but it ultimately just screwed things up more. I felt horrible. The teacher noticed shortly, and brought another teacher in to see if they could do something. She wasn't there for the remainder of the week, and when she finally came back to school, her hair was gone. Now my little shit brain thought, just shut up, don't ever do this again and move on. Nobody found out it was myself, except for my friend, of course. As I got older, there were always reminders. Her sister and I became close friends and hung out often. When high school approached, I ended up working with Bubblegum Girl at a job on the weekends. I always wanted to tell her, but for some reason I couldn't. She was actually kinda mean, distant, and short the more I got to know her. Her sister would tell me all the time about their fights and arguments, which always reinforced the idea of myself never telling her. Sometimes I wonder if it was gum that made her mean. The teachers vetted and suspected one of the girls in the class, and to my knowledge, no girl was held accountable for the mysterious Hubba Bubba Bubble gum. Story 6. Oh geez, I'll try to not make this long. I always blame myself. So, my adopted mom and I got into a fight while she was sick and on dialysis. For context, she was about 76, and I was about to turn 13. It was October. School pictures were being taken, and even though she was sick and couldn't do it herself, she wanted me to dress up, like bow in the hair and everything. Me about to turn a teenager in a month, I absolutely refused, and so the fight began. It ended in yells and demands for me to go back in my room. I did, and I went to sleep. The next morning I went on as normal, and I got dressed up. I didn't wear a bow, but I curled it and made it cute and put on an outfit I knew she would like. When I went into the living room, however, she was still asleep. Now, usually because of her situation, she's still awake when I'm getting ready for school at 6 a.m., so it was a little odd. I still told her bye anyways and hugged her while she was asleep and told my dad to tell her not to worry, and I was sorry for fighting. In her condition, stress was not a good thing. Before this fight, I had only been living back there for about 4 weeks, so I wouldn't interrupt her healing process. IDK. She never woke up that day. My dad called the ambulance, and she was flown to another hospital. I was picked up an hour before pictures were taken. Less than 2 weeks later, she died as a brain-dead person who had no idea who we all were. A few months before this, she was in the hospital too, but she was progressing and sent home, going to appointments weekly. I blame myself. She was so upset, and I told her to calm down a few times. I apologized a bunch when I was alone, but I couldn't tell if she knew. Anyways, I miss her a lot. Story 7. I didn't remember the majority of my youngest child's first years, because I was severely abused during that time by her father. I had a baby book for my oldest, and when my youngest was older and asked about hers, I told her I wasn't sure where I put it, but promised that I would find it. I bought one and got a pack of colored ink pens to make it look like things were written at different times and completely made everything up. I thought I was crazy for the longest time because I couldn't remember anything. I had no idea of how physical and psychological abuse affects memory. My kids are both adults now, and I feel so guilty that I can't recall more than a few clear memories of my youngest's early years. My kids believe I divorced their dad after they graduated because I was having a midlife crisis, but the truth is, that was my finish line. I stayed to protect them from him. If I left, he would have unsupervised visits, but because I stayed, I was there to calm him down, be a buffer, and suffer abuse behind closed doors. Story 8. I'm not sure if this is disturbing or just embarrassing or what, but I have a secret fetish for pants wetting and diapers for myself and other adults. Despite the fact that I know it doesn't really hurt anyone, it's kind of my deep, dark secret. It's been with me since I was a young child, starting first as some kind of fascination until I reached puberty and realized that there was a sexual component to it. I had zero idea why or where it came from. I had a great childhood and was never abused or mistreated in any way, and I still have a great relationship with my family. I think I had a relatively normal potty training experience as a kid, and I don't think I had a lot of accidents compared to other kids, and yet here I am, still totally turned on by something that I can't explain. There have been times when it had caused me to resent it, and resent myself too, but there have also been times where I've gotten a lot of pleasure and comfort out of it. Nowadays I have mostly come to terms with the fact that it's just like any other unusual kink, but it's still something that I keep almost entirely to myself because I'm kind of ashamed of it and worried about how it and I might be perceived. So that's my deepest, perhaps darkest secret. I'm sure some people will find it disturbing, and at times it has been for me too, but I do feel that it could be way worse. Story 9. We were living a lovely life in the village with no problems at all, when suddenly the police broke into our house and accused my father for carrying weapons without permission, and I felt like something is wrong. There was someone who reported this to the police, and we still don't know who is he, and after this event, my life changed 180 degrees. This happened to us 8 years ago in Russia, and my dad was a retired teacher and a beekeeper, but now he's in prison. Story 10. When I was younger, I was often told that I look handsome, etc., and I've been hit on by both men and women of various ages you wouldn't believe. Problem is, I never enjoyed the attention, felt icky no matter who tried. Seeing other comments, it's clear that I was only a hair away from possible SA scenarios in some cases. I have never talked to my mom or anyone about it, but I think she knew, because some people just weren't being themselves around me to the point she would interfere or give me advice to be cautious around them. I used to think this only happens to girls, but it turns out that regardless of gender, if something is pretty, people want to own it. Story 11. I dislike my siblings so much these days. They have a good life, and they let one shit traumatic thing they witnessed become their whole personality. It has been 3 years and they will not move on. They have a beautiful family, loving partner and therapist and meds, yet will loudly play victim always. Our parents play into it. We can't even hang out or have a conversation without it being pulled up again. I feel bad, and when it happened, I gave my support and love. But 3 years enough, stop yelling victim at every family event and taking up all the space. I know I am the asshole for feeling this way, and I'll never tell anyone in the family or friends how I feel or think. But this is why I stopped going to family events and don't really talk to anyone. Everything goes back around to them and their life and their family and them. It's tiring. Wow, sorry for dumping. I have never gotten this all out of my head before. Story 12, TW sewer slide ideas. I had to do like mandatory volunteer work for college, get 28 hours somewhere. It ended up being calling the elderly, just to talk, just to give those who signed up a sense of community and help them feel less lonely. It was such a lovely initiative, but I could not handle it. I did a couple calls, and every single one made my social anxiety shake. It took me a lot of effort to reach the program's weekly quota. After a week or two, I decided I needed to stop. Although I really wanted to lend an ear to all those poor people, I felt like it was not having a positive enough impact on my ongoing depression. After all, I had recently decided on a date for when to end my life. So I emailed the program that due to personal circumstances I could no longer continue. Plus, I did not want to leave them hanging when I was gone. Then I faked the approval sheet we had to get signed by the volunteer programs, spend too long making a believable autograph, and handed it in at my college. I passed the course, and nobody knows. I feel terrible about it all. Story 13. Trigger warning. Grooming. My older brothers were both in Boy Scouts as kids. As their little sister, I tagged along everywhere. It's taken me many years to come to terms with, but I think I was groomed or at least exposed to creepy actions by an older scout in his 20s when I was 4 or 5. I don't remember a lot of what happened besides a few creepy instances, but it may be my mind blocking things out, especially being so young. I've said the words, "I may have been groomed" to an ex once, but never went into detail, one instance being very clear in my mind. I've never told my parents or brothers. I don't think I ever will. I fear if the can opens too far, I don't know what I'll remember. Story 14. One morning, I went to the bathroom and had intense pain. Pain so unbearable, I nearly passed out. I looked to see what was causing the pain. It was a sac. I was pregnant and had a miscarriage. I could barely move and cried from the inside because my parents had no idea I was bleeding badly. I told my BF, who was scared and worried about me. We drove to a clinic. The clinic told us we needed to visit the ER. I said no because I was ashamed. I never went to the hospital. I'm thankful for still being alive. My parents don't know. They're wonderful parents, but I thought all the hardship we were going through during that time, I didn't want to add the burden. I cried inside from the pain while watching a movie with them, playing board games, etc. I love them dearly, but they have no idea they lost a grandchild. Story 15. I genuinely and absolutely resent the very existence of boomers and older, and I resent the fact that during the height of the pandemic all efforts were mostly save the old fucks, and I genuinely believe the world would be a better place right now if most of them would have perished. Take a lot of Gen X with them for all I care. They're just useless cowards. I am 36, just old enough to remember a time where I would smile at the thought of the future, where you could imagine all those things in wonder and amazement. And because of those rigid, disgusting fucks, it's all gone. There is no future. They're nothing but pain and suffering because all these useless bastards can think of is their own comfort. And the all-prevalent thought of, I don't want to change anything in my last years, and all shall remain the same, or return to some magical past. Story 16. My mother is a dumb blonde. I mean it as well. There's so many things that I remember when I was a kid that she did that was so dumb. 1. I played soccer, and when our team got to the finals, she made us hot chocolate for our team to stay warm during the game. Little did I know is she cleaned a cooler with Dawn soap and forgot to rinse it out a few times. It was hot chocolate with dish soap. Yuck. 2. When my mom first experienced the internet, she almost gave her social away and bank account number away. On Facebook, there were ads on the sidebars, and she was like, I could win money. She wasn't drunk either. I had to explain to her not to do this. It's terrible now. Every time I use their Wi-Fi, there's a pop-up that leads to a virus. 3. The other day I told her that local school district has a measles outbreak. I know the reason is from parents not vaccinating their children, but my mom, who watches Fox News, says, must be from all those illegals spreading the diseases. Ugh, help me. 4. I just remembered this one. My parents' dog recently was put to sleep and he was 15 years old. My dog had an ear infection, so my mom puts that medical jelly down his ear to see if it works. Nope, just made the dog deaf. Then she stops caring for him and his fur starts patching up over his eyes. My mom never took him to the vet to get rid of it and hoping he would pass away, so I had to take care of a blind and deaf dog for a few months. Story 17. When I started my career and was looking for a job 3 years ago, I went into this depression as I was unable to get any interviews or callbacks. Knowing that I have the ability to crack said interviews, but not getting a chance, really took such a toll on my mental health that I even considered suicide after 3 months. Now, after 3 years, when I'm in the middle of a career pivot into data business analytics, I feel like that point will come again, and I'm afraid because I don't know if I have it in me to be patient enough without any connections, networks in this new industry to start from ground zero. Story 18. I have never told anyone this, but I think that maybe my family member SA'd me once when they were a little drunk, and I was extremely drunk. They were helping me change for bed and kind of groped me. I can't remember if they said sorry or not. I don't know whether it was an accident or not, but given how out of character it is for this person, I mostly tell myself it probably was. However, I remember running through the scenario in my head that night multiple times and concluding that it didn't seem to make sense as a likely accident. I should also mention that I was groomed and SA'd by another family member of ours about 10 years before this incident. I was much closer to this family member, but they were close to them too. I told my parents about it and reported it to the police. Story 19. My headphones were in my pocket the entire time. I was at the dog park and talking to a few people there. We had a nice time together, but when it was time to leave, I realized I had dropped my headphones. Everyone at the park slowly enlisted themselves to help find them. The park was 5-inch high grass, and the size of a football field. After about 30 minutes worth of help from the nice people, I found the headphones in my pocket. My dog and I quickly left without saying anything and never went back. Story 20. I have very violent thoughts and desires, yet have been conditioned and self-trained to repress them so I don't hurt myself or others. I genuinely hate most people and want to hurt them, but some part of me knows it's a bad thing to do, so I just don't. I've worked hard to soften up as I've gotten older, and only till recently have I been able to get slightly past these with therapy. Story 21. I feel like I'm not real, but I know I have such a good life, and I wish I was able to enjoy it more, instead of being worried about what's real, and if my life has a meaning, or have to think about any more existential bullshit. Because I have a loving family and a beautiful girlfriend, and I should be happy. But I don't know where to go, and don't want to make my family feel like I lied to them by saying I was okay. Story 22. My mom had some sort of breakdown when I was 12. She started acting extremely impulsive and frenzied. Her emotions were out of control, occasionally becoming delirious, and her behavior was totally abnormal. She would buy useless things that we had absolutely no purpose for. Once she bought 3 Apple Watches and 2 turtles, and we ended up having to give away most of them. One thing I remember vividly was how she would lather essential oils and lotions on her body. I would grow nauseous if I spent too much time in her room. Her actions were just so odd in so many ways I couldn't explain, usually bordering on childishness. As I type this out, I realize it doesn't sound as disturbing as I thought it was, but honestly, I just don't have trust in myself to describe it properly. It persisted for almost half a year, and she was diagnosed with BPD. I'm not sure about this, but my dad said so, and took pills. After a while, it just kind of faded away. She acts like her old self now, except for a few minor changes. She's awful at parking now, although maybe that just happened when you grow older. I'm unsure on the details of her condition, as my dad mostly kept me in the dark about it due to my young age. I'm 15 this year, but she struggled with stress at home, and my dad was at another country for work. According to my sister, my mom had minor depression and insomnia before it happened. Ironically, during this time, my school life was going great and I was overcoming my social anxiety for the first time in 5 years.